I'm honored to have you here, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Welcome to another exciting video, where we'll be shedding light on organisation of sport in Australia. The organisation of sport in Australia has been largely determined by its federal system of government, Australian government, and 6 states and 2 territories governments and local governments. All 3 levels play an important role in terms of funding, policies and facilities. Each major sport is managed by a national sports organisation, with state counterparts that manage community sporting clubs. Umbrella or peak organisations represent the interests of sports organisations or particular sport issues. Education sector plays a small role through universities and schools. Private sector's involvement is extensive in professional sport through facilities, club ownership and finance sponsorship. In the next segment, we'll be exploring government and its implications for our subject matter. Government involvement in sport up until the years was fairly limited, with local governments playing a major role through the provision of sporting facilities. However, this changed over the next 2 decades, with an Australian Bureau of Statistics survey in finding that approximately $2 billion was spent on sport by 3 levels of government: 10% from the Australian government, 40% from state and territory governments, and the remaining 50% from local government. State, territory and local government spending was predominantly directed to facilities and their upkeep. This amount most likely has increased since that survey. National approach: in 1973, the Recreation Ministers' Council was established to provide a forum for Australian government and state and territory ministers responsible for sport and recreation to discuss matters of interest. With government taking an increased involvement in sport, it became the Sport and Recreation Ministers' Council. More recently is referred to as Meeting of Sport and Recreation Ministers. The meeting is assisted by the Committee of Australian Sport and Recreation Officials (CASRO), previously called the Standing Committee on Sport and Recreation (SCORS). The meeting works cooperatively on issues such as match fixing, sport participation and water safety. In 2011, ministers signed the National Sport and Active Recreation Policy Framework. The framework provides a mechanism for the achievement of national goals for sport and active recreation, sets out agreed roles and responsibilities of governments and their expectations of sport and active recreation partners. In 1993, National Elite Sports Council was established to provide a forum for communication, issues management and national program coordination across the high performance in Australia. It includes representatives from AIS, State Institute Academies, Australian Olympic Committee, Australian Paralympic Committee, and the Australian Commonwealth Games Association. In 2011, National Institute System Intergovernmental Agreement provides guidance on how the sector will operate, with a principal focus on the delivery of the high-performance plans of national sporting organisations. Get ready for an enlightening exploration as we dig into Australian government and understand its role in the broader context. The Australian government provided small amounts of funding in the years and years through the support of the National Fitness Council and international sporting teams such as the Australian Olympic team. The Australian government's serious involvement and investment into sport came with it establishing the Australian Institute of Sport (AIS) in 1981. AIS was set up to improve Australia's performances in international sport, which had started to decline in the years and years, culminating in Australia winning no gold medals at the 1976 Montreal Olympics. In 1985, the Australian Sports Commission (ASC) was established to improve the Australian government's administration of sport in terms of funding, participation and elite sport. The 1989 Senate inquiry into drugs in sport resulted in the establishment of the Australian Sport Drug Agency, now called Australian Sports Anti-Doping Authority (ASADA), in 1990 to manage Australia's anti-doping program. In 2021, Sport Integrity Australia was established and it incorporated ASADA operations and also covers child abuse in sporting environments, unfair manipulation of games, and failures to protect those involved. The Minister for Sport is supported by the Office of Sport located in their department. The office works with the key agencies ASC and ASADA in the development of sport. Let's now venture into the realm of state governments and explore the fascinating intricacies it holds. State and territory governments have a department with responsibility for sport and recreation. These departments provide assistance to state sports organizations, develop and manage sporting facilities, provide financial assistance for major sporting events, and develop policies to assist sports across their state or territory. Each Australian state and territory has established its own Institute Academy of Sport, ACT Academy of Sport established 1989, New South Wales Institute of Sport 1996, Northern Territory Institute of Sport 1996, Queensland Academy of Sport 1991, South Australian Sports Institute 1982, Tasmanian Institute of Sport 1985. Victorian Institute of Sport 1990 and Western Australian Institute of Sport 1984. These institutes, academies and the AIS work together through the National Institutes Network and the National Elite Sports Council. Victoria and New South Wales have established regional academies. Many state governments have facility management trusts to manage their major sporting precincts and facilities. Examples are Sydney Olympic Park Authority New South Wales and State Sports Centre Trust Victoria. With our foundation established, it's time to explore local governments and its relevance to our overarching theme. There are 560 local councils across Australia. Local governments generally focus on the provision of facilities such as swimming pools, sporting fields, stadiums and tennis courts. Investment into sports development programs for local clubs is generally limited. In national sporting issues, local governments may be represented by Australian Local Government Association. Get ready for an exciting part as we dive into national sports organisations. In 2012, there were 102 national sports organisations (NSO) in Australia recognised by the Australian Sports Commission. 63 NSOs received funding from ASCN. All of these organisations are affiliated to an international organisation and, where appropriate, to the Australian Olympic Committee, Australian Paralympic Committee, Australian Commonwealth Games Association and the Confederation of Australian Sport. These organisations manage the participation and high-performance sport programs of the sport. Several of the national sports organisations run professional sports competitions: Leadership Cricket Australia, Sheffield Shield, Big Bash League, Women's Big Bash League, AFL Commission, AFL and AFLW, Australian Rugby League Commission, National Rugby League, Australian Rugby Union, Super Rugby Football Federation Australia, A League Men and A League Women Basketball Australia, National Basketball League and Women's National Basketball League, Netball Australia, Super Netball, Baseball Australia, Australian Baseball League. There are other leagues where athletes receive little remuneration. These include Bowls Australia, Cricket Australia, Women's National Cricket League, Hockey Australia, Australian Hockey League Men and Women, Water Polo Australia, Australian Water Polo League Men and Women. Get ready to uncover the mysteries surrounding state sports organisations as we navigate its intriguing terrain. National sports organisations generally have 8 affiliated state sports organisations that manage the activities of clubs in their state. This means there are over 800 state sports organisations in Australia. Most states have an organisation that represents their interests. These include VicSport, NSW Sports Federation, ACTSPORT, Tasmanian Sports Federation, Western Australian Sports Federation, Sport SA, and Sports Federation of Queensland. Get ready for a captivating exploration as we unravel the layers of clubs and their profound significance. Community sporting clubs are regarded as the lifeblood of Australian sport. These sporting clubs are affiliated to national and state sporting organisations. In 2010, Australian Bureau of Statistics found that 2.3 million or 14% of the adult population undertook voluntary work with the sport and recreation organisations, most likely to be sporting clubs. At the club level, volunteers include coaches, officials and administrators. Clubs generally receive their limited income from membership fees. Professional sporting clubs have been established to compete in national and international leagues such as Australian Football League, National Rugby League, A-League, ANZ Championship and Super 15. With our curiosity piqued, let's embark on a dedicated exploration of universities and its fascinating intricacies. University sport in Australia is based primarily around the provision of sporting clubs and facilities. Only a few universities offer individual athletic scholarships. This is very different from the United States system organized by the National Collegiate Athletic Association, which has well-organized sports programs with scholarships. There has been a recent trend for universities to become involved with professional sporting teams. University of Canberra is a major sponsor. The ACT Brumbies and Victoria University has developed a strong partnership with the Western Bulldogs. Let's now turn our attention to sports schools and examine its role within the larger context. Most state education departments have established special sports high schools. These schools offer opportunities for talent sports students to develop sports skills in an environment that balances their sporting and education commitments. Westfield Sports High in Sydney is an example of a specialist school. Now, we shift our focus to peak organisations, a topic that deserves our attention. There are a range of peak or umbrella organisations that represent the specific interests and provide advice to governments, sports organisations and the community. Australian Olympic Committee AOC manages Australia's participation at the Summer Olympics, Winter Olympics and Youth Olympics. Paralympics Australia PA manages Australia's participation at the Summer Paralympics and Winter Paralympics. Australian Commonwealth Games Association ACGA manages Australia's participation at the Commonwealth Games and Commonwealth Youth Games. Australian University Sport AUS manages university sport including the Australian University Games and Australia's participation at the Summer Universiade and Winter Universiade. Confederation of Australian Sports CAS Coalition of Major Professional and Participation Sports COMPPS provides a collective response from the 7 major sports. Deaf Sports Australia DSA manages Australia's participation at the Summer Deaflympic Games and Winter Deaflympic Games. Sports Medicine Australia SMA national umbrella body for sports medicine and sports science. Sports Dietitians Australia SDA professional organisation of dietitians specialising in sports nutrition. Australian Council for Health, Physical Education and Recreation ACHPER represents the interests of professionals working in the fields of health, physical education, sport, movement sciences, dance and community fitness. Australian Society for Sports History ASSH research and promotion of sport history in Australia. Australian and New Zealand Sports Law Association ANZSLA education and advocacy on legal issues in Australian and New Zealand sport. Australasian College of Sports Physicians ACSP represents Australian and New Zealand sports physicians. Exercise and Sports Science Australia ESSA represents exercise and sports science professionals. Australian Athletes Alliance AAA advocates on behalf of Australian athletes at the state and national levels. Sport Management Association of Australia and New Zealand research and promotion of sport management in Australia and New Zealand. Sport Australia Hall of Fame recognises and promotes the sporting achievements of Australians. Outdoor Council of Australia professional organisation for active recreation pursuits and outdoor education. Also the owner of the Australian Adventurous Activity Standard. Members are Outdoors NSW and ACT, Outdoors Victoria, Outdoors Queensland, Outdoors WA, Outdoors SA, Australian Camps Association, Christian Venues Association, Scouts Australia and Outdoor Education Australia. Get ready for an exciting exploration as we unravel the mysteries of private sector. This sector contributes to sport through facilities, finance and sponsorship. All professional sports competitions and their teams rely heavily on private sponsorship. This sponsorship is provided to national sports organizations and community clubs, but at greatly reduced level. Only high-profile sports organizations such as Australian Football League, Australian Rugby Union, Australian Rugby League Commission and Football Federation Australia have substantial sponsorship income. Many sporting venues have been renamed to include the sponsor's name to increase revenue. Examples include Eshed Stadium, Suncorp Stadium and Paterson's Stadium. Many professional sporting teams have a private ownership model. This is a growing trend, but it has not been without its difficulties. Your feedback helps me improve, so please take a moment to leave a comment or review.